This month's slideshow is brought to you by Steel Highway. Visit steel-highway.com or follow the link in the description to find out how Steel Highway is supporting the railfan community. Steel Highway, the magazine for the modern railfan. Hello and welcome to part 2 of the May 2022 Iowa Chapter NRHS and Cedar Rapids Railfan slideshow. This is the second half of Rob Leachman's program, which was initially presented at Cedar Rapids Railfans on Monday, May 16th. It has been recorded and it is being rebroadcast on this YouTube channel for everyone to enjoy that missed it. If you have not already, I definitely encourage you to go back and watch part 1 before you watch part 2. And with that, we will begin the new program. All right, we're here with Rob Leachman for part 2 of the UP run-through program. And Rob, you're picking up with the Illinois Central or ICG. So
here we go. Okay, so westbound off ICG to UP, ICG's train handling the long distance UP traffic was CC1. Short for Chicago Council Bluffs 1, which became UP's ICG forwarder, leaving Hawthorne Yard in Chicago before midnight and arriving in Council Bluffs next afternoon. And as I mentioned earlier, there was only a 13-month period with run-through power, but the run-through blocking, the run-through train continued long after that. And as I mentioned, IC had trouble maintaining their share of the power. So there are a lot of photos from 1969 era of the IC power going out to Los Angeles, where the UP was picking up to balance the horsepower hours and miles that way. So here you have the UP's hot train out of LA, the LAX, climbing up Cajon Pass, and you see 3 new IC Jeep 40s on the back of the power consist. By the time I was around 73, 74, this was kind of the standard way CC1 would look for Paducah rebuilds on the point. And we have, this is the Missouri Pacific block. There's one reefer Rath meet. The MOP will take it down to Kansas City to get on the Santa Fe, some empty cement cars. Then you have all the UP intermodal and carload, North Platte and beyond. Here's your CNW main line. Their woodbine siding at that time right there. And here's CC1 arriving at Council Bluffs on a different June day. You see we have some John Deere tractors from Waterloo, and then the UP intermodal and carload. And then different day, but the same train. This is the ICG forwarder. So here's the train interchange from the ICG. The UP is powering this with a Centennial and an SD40 this day. And we can see the Rath meet in the reefers, and there's a Beacon's moving van and other traffic stretched out along the lane cutoff. And I will jump ahead a few years to 1980, when now the train's being powered by Jeep 38s. But again, you see the MOP interchange block of the Santa Fe cars to go down to Kansas City, and then all the UP traffic behind that. And then here's the same train down in the Missouri Valley approaching Euclid siding. Then we'll jump over to eastern Iowa, and up here is Dubuque, and along behind the levee here, we have CC1 in the morning going through wood interlocking back here where they cross the Milwaukee track. And he's just turning away from the river and the newer paint scheme with a bunch of units on a big important train. And then they're accelerating as they hit the grade, leaving the Mississippi. So eastbound, UP's ICG P&M leaving North Platte in the midnight fleet. When it got to Council Bluffs in the morning, would become ICG's CC8 run train. And ICG just simply requested UP to make a Rockford block, and then they would flat switch for the Chicago connections there. Run-through power was only that 13-month period, January 69 through February 1970. So here we have the ICG P&M coming into Council Bluffs. Typically, the UP would have their Council Bluffs proper traffic on this train, and so he's pulling over by the I-Stack to cut that off before they deliver the train to the ICG. And then zooming back, you can see downtown Omaha in the distance as the train comes off the Missouri Bridge. Now we're back at Euclid siding. Here's the CC1 we saw earlier that's going to go into the siding for a dark territory meet. And here's CC8 that the UP run through from the other direction waiting on the main line. And rear crew is out to inspect CC8's train. And then the head brakeman for CC8 gets the switch once they're clear and gives a high ball to his head end and climbs aboard, and they're on their way east. Kind of unusual. We have a 6-axle unit second out in the consist. Okay, now let's switch to the CNW. And now we have a big lineup to go through. So let's start with the eastbounds. CNW number 250, or what CNW had a wonderful tradition, I think, of their important trains were not only given numbers, but also names. And so 250 was the advanced Wood Street, became UP's, I'm sorry, the other way around, we're going eastbound. So this is UP's advanced CNW P&M, the noon fleet, becomes CNW 250, the advanced Wood Street. And you can see the blocks in here. He has the TOFC block, a Grand Trunk block, and a 40th Street block, delivering to the CNW at Council Bluffs in the evening with run-through power. And CNW was the only road with enough traffic to where UP could make an Iowa block, a whole train of just traffic for Iowa. So UP made a Boone block at North Platte and dispatched that as the CNWX on the UP, which became CNW number 254. And I guess because the UP symbol was CNWX, the CNW name for the train was Madam X. And then I'll explain in a minute, but a service was started up to have run-through perishable UP to CNW to Penn Central to Eastern destinations. So UP started operating a Penn Central perishable and manifest in October 73, which became CNW 246, the BC perishable. And you see there's no Chicago traffic on this train. There's an Enola block, there's a Selkirk block, and there's Penn Central shorts for Blue Island. So it's all Penn Central traffic that's going beyond Chicago. So we have a train to bypass Chicago. Then in the night fleet, we have the Wood Street P&N becoming 248, the Wood Street perishable. And this is the primary eastbound hot TOFC train off the UP. And then 252 was the Rocket. They would set out a block at Fremont for the CNW train to Sioux City. And then you'd have the Penn Central blocks plus a proviso block. CNW called this train the Rocket. It was the same schedule, but of course these trains would not be exactly at the same time. They'd be a half hour or an hour apart, but a couple of very hot trains. And then the train with the Sioux City block off of the CNW PM would be number 852 with the traffic heading up to Sioux City and the Twin Cities. So of course CNW named it the Viking. And then in addition to this menu of the TOFC and carload traffic, there were about 2 to 3 unit coal trains per day to various Commonwealth, Edison, and Wisconsin Electric destinations and Iowa Public Power. You can see the UP symbols there. Okay, so here we go out trackside. So here's Madam X, which would be leaving Council Bluffs in the morning with the Boone block. They would pick up other CNW traffic at Council Bluffs and But this is your one train of all Iowa stuff off the North Platte hump. I'm standing on the Highway 30 overpass, and you can still see the pavement from when Highway 30 crossed the tracks at grade. And now we're out at Kate Shelley Bridge at the east end and 248, the Wood Street Perishable. This is UP's primary connection for hot TOFC to Chicago from all the West Coast origins. And we have 3 units leading the train. Behind the TOFC is the Grand Trunk Block with a lot of PFE reefers. In September, these would mostly be loaded with juice grapes going to Toronto and Montreal for all the Italian families to make their Christmas wine. They would run these blocks on CN right into a big paved parking lot and sell the grapes to the families right out of the cars. And then a little further on, approaching Ames, we have our 248 hot shot about to descend down into Ames. And it looks like, let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pheasants trying to get across before the train. I think these guys probably had to go over the units. I don't think they would have made it. And westbound, the all TOFC train, the Falcon 245 leaving Wood Street late morning. And you can see the blocks on it. And then 3 days a week, there was a second section, 243, with only LA and Pacific Northwest blocks on it. And then 1 day a week, there was a second section of 243 with only an LA block. So, you know, you get to the end of the week when there's a huge amount of freight forwarded shipments, and on the peak day, you have 3 trains of TOFC out of Chicago. 251 was the low priority. These are mostly empties for the UP. They would separate empties from carloads. So if they were under the gun at North Platte, they could hump the carloads first. And that was not run through power and was interchanged to become the afternoon advanced Council Bluffs forwarder. And then we have a train of PFE empties, which became UP's CNWR for CNW reefers, 241 on CNW. But in addition to the PFE reefers on the rear, they would carry the Crawford BN block to set out at Fremont that would go out the Cowboy line. They would have the Omaha Autos, which would also set out at Fremont for a local to take down to North Omaha. And then at West Chicago, they may have picked up a little bit of North Platte other traffic. CNW renumbered it in 76 as they get more and more hot trains. Then the first hot carload train was 247 out of Proviso after midnight, becoming UP's advanced CNW forwarder, interchanging to Fremont in the early evening. Solid train of carloads. And then coming down from St. Paul, you have 847, the westbound Viking. And again, he would have a BN Crawford block to set over at Fremont for the Cowboy to pick up, and the rest of the train would be added to 247 when it got to Fremont to set UP's AC and NWF. And then behind him, leaving Proviso around sunup would be 249, the UP forwarder, becoming UP CNW forwarder. And you can see the blocks on the train trying to beat per diem interchange to the UP at Council Bluffs and getting out to North Platte in the morning. And then you had the 2 to 3 empty coal trains. CNW called these hopper trains per day on average interchanged at Council Bluffs. So let's go out to trackside and we'll see some of this. So that huge menu of trains, and I'll explain why in 73 suddenly the traffic was really shifting to CNW, is remember in 65, Heinemann saw a very bleak picture. The company was struggling to stay alive. The traffic was on other lines and they pulled up the double track. And so here we are out west of Woodbine, and here we have our main line with pumping in the mud, jointed rail. The other track is gone, and yet all that hot UP traffic has to get across this railroad. And if you think this is bad, you should see the 10,000 foot sidings. They were slow ordered to 5 or 10 miles an hour. And if you have like a 4,000 foot train to crawl through the siding is ridiculous. So normally all the meets were made in Western Iowa by backing in and backing out. So you'd have a super hot train off the UP of all TOFC and reefers, and he would make 2 back-end meets going across Iowa. Here we are at Jefferson, Iowa, where the Milwaukee branch crosses the CNW main lines in the evening, and Milwaukee is manning this tower to control this interlocking. Maybe he had, one way freight go by during the day, and meanwhile they're paying this guy to control this crossing. And after dusk, we have the Falcon racing west. This is the Falcon as it's arriving North Platte. You can see one CNW unit has been cut off at Fremont. UP has added a Jeep for cab signals, and that brought the crew out of Council Bluffs. And these trailers are all pre-blocked. They will set the UP forwarder trains to the Northwest and to the LA and to the Bay Area. Now we have a little sequence on the Viking. Here we are crossing the Missouri River. This train has come down from East St. Paul, turned the corner at California Junction, and is going out to Fremont. At the time, you would see the U-30Cs on this train during the short period they were on the CNW. And here we are out at Kennard Siding in Nebraska. And now you can see the siding has been improved and lengthened to handle all this heavy traffic. It's still dark territory at the time of this picture. And now we're passing Arlington Siding, coasting downhill. But this is Twin Cities to West Coast traffic running through on the UP. Now we're back in Omaha, and here we have a hopper train off the CNW. UP was tight on power in these days, and so they wanted to use the newer power on the trains requiring priority service, so they assigned the old SD24s to the coal trains, which Commonwealth Edison was pretty unhappy about, and CNW wasn't very happy either. Over on the other track, you have a CNW local, which worked the industries in Omaha, the old Great Western transfer caboose, and the conductor leaning out to watch the meet with the hopper train, a Wisconsin Electric hopper train coming up the grade. You can see the oil leaks on these old ST24s. They're on their last legs. But brand new cars. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the Falcons. Is that the UP looked out and saw fast TOFC service being introduced by its competitors. BN had the Pacific Zip to the Northwest. Santa Fe had the Super C to Los Angeles. But of course, UP is reliant on the Iowa lines to get this traffic to and from Chicago. And so following that policy of neutrality is in 1972, the UP sent letters to the executives of all the Iowa lines is that we would please like you to run a fast, dedicated TOFC train service between Chicago and your connection with us. And the Rock Island looked at it and said, well, we're hauling this TOFC out to Denver and interchanging it to Rio Grande, and we need every nickel. And so we can't turn it over to the UP at Council Bluffs. Sorry, we can't help you. And the Milwaukee Road looked at it and said that, well, we're running our 261 XL special to the Northwest, and we don't want to cannibalize that. We need the long haul on that stuff. Sorry, we can't help you. And the BN was handling the mail, and they said, well, we'll add a little bit of traffic to the mail train. We'll put our Los Angeles TOFC that's routed UP on that train. But we're not going to give you the Denver or Salt Lake City or Northern California stuff. We want to haul that long haul to Denver and give it to the Rio Grande. And we're not going to give you the PNW traffic because we want to haul it ourselves up to there. But CNW, and in particular, the AVP of Transportation, Ed Burkhart, was a very enthusiastic partner for UP. And so they said, sure, we'd love to run a TOFC train to compete with the others and get this traffic. They converted a potato unloading terminal at Wood Street in downtown Chicago into an intermodal ramp. And this was a great location. This was very close to the companies like Clipper Car Loading and Universal Car Loading and Western Car Loading, that were loading box cars, but now they could use intermodal and just drive it over to Wood Street. So March 73, the Falcon intermodal service starts. The service grew quickly to one train 6 days a week, a second train 3 days a week, and a third section 1 day a week. So here on a peak day, we have the second 243. This is the third section of the Falcon service. All 50 of these trailers are going to Los Angeles. On a different day, here's 243. In this case, it's the second section of the day with 2 trains crossing Kate Shelley Bridge. And you see a CNW unit ahead of 3 UP units. Looks like a nice spring day. The trees are leafing out. Okay, the next important development shifting traffic to the CNW is what happened to the Transcontinental Perishables, the eastbound PFE business. And UP was alarmed as this very truck competitive business was in decline, and the marketing department wanted to do something about it. So my boss, Richard Peterson, in 1972 proposed we should have, we look at the count of cars at North Platte, and like to going to Selkirk, New York, which would be the traffic for New York City and Boston, there were 90 cars a day during the summer. And going to Enola Yard, serving Baltimore and Washington and Philadelphia, there would be about 60 cars a day. But they're all going on different Iowa lines. So we're switching for Iowa lines when we could be running solid trains to the eastern terminals. And so if the shippers would simply agree to consolidate their traffic via one Iowa line, we could build trains to bypass Chicago and catch up to the trucks. Ed Burkhardt of CNW and his equivalent at Penn Central, Bob Hasselman, were strong supporters of the proposal. And in August 73, the various West Coast fruit and vegetable shipper groups, they met and canvassed their membership. And they said that, okay, we will encourage our memberships to exclusively route via CNW so you can set up the service. But no, I want to be clear here. Notice how UP did not suggest which Iowa line they would use. That would be, illegal perhaps. So they weren't going to do that. They let the shippers choose on their own, and they chose CNW. So in October 73, UP began making Enola, Selkirk, and Blue Island blocks at North Platte. I spent a lot of time out at North Platte making sure the cars were blocked correctly, and it was pretty tough. A lot of cars will be billed in New York City, but then you got to read the fine print. If they're going to the Bronx to Hunts Point, they should be routed via Selkirk. But if they're going to Brooklyn, South Brooklyn, then they want to use the car ferry across from Greenville, New Jersey, and then they need to go via Enola. So we had a New York City phone book out at North Platte and a huge map of New York City, and we would make sure these cars got blocked right. And you can start to understand the complexities that Penn Central had and why they went under. Okay, so here we are out at North Platte, and it's end of the day, late afternoon, and a Roseville fruit from Roseville with all our California perishables, over 100 and some cars being pushed up to the hump. And then you see the reefers coasting down into the bowl. There's all the empty auto parts going back to downstate Ohio. This long string is the Selkirk block, and then right behind it is the Enola block, and we're building up the big blocks of East Coast perishables. By this time, there was very little PFE traffic to the Midwest. The truckers could go back with meat and cheese and get a two-way haul. But to the East Coast, there wasn't any perishable going to the West Coast, so the railroad still had it. And then down into the bowl, our reefers are going away, and you can see, I think there's about 9 reefers in motion in this photo as this stuff's being sorted out very quickly. And then we have our first run of the Penn Central Perishable and Manifest. It's our first train to bypass Chicago, and we have a fairly dramatic sky. It had been sleeting all day, and it was very cold and windy, and now that we're going to have some drop-in light to do a spectacular lighting of our first train to break down the Chicago barrier. And then at dusk, our train leaves the yard. Okay, so with the loads going via CNW, then the PFE company will want the empties routed back to equalize miles. And so in the spring of 74, the Penn Central began making up a solid CNW UP empty reefer train at Elkhart so that the empties would also bypass switching in the Chicago terminals. And then that became the 241 train in UP CNWR I talked about earlier. And then once you have a train of reefers, then it occurred to them that, well, maybe we should put the carload traffic on this train too. So now the carload traffic is being encouraged to route via CNW. And SP was kind of not willing to speed up their service at first, but then in 1976, the ICC finally allowed a rate hike on perishables, and SP said that, okay, we got our rate hike. We will speed up the trains. So they agreed to accelerate their perishable schedules. And with the bypass in Chicago and the speed up on the SP from a 5 p.m. cutoff out in the fields across California, we were now doing a 6th morning spot at the major East Coast perishable markets like Hunts Point in New York and equivalents in Boston and Baltimore and Washington and so on. Now compare that to Z train intermodal service now, and this is like an 8th or a 9th morning spot. So this, I think, was the all-time record on fabulous transcontinental service. So with the increased volume now that SP is speeded up and they're much more truck competitive, now we have 2 trains a day that are going North Platte to Penn Central interchange at Blue Island via CNW, what UP called the Advanced Conrail P&M and the Conrail P&M, CNW trains 244 and 246. So here we have 241, the empty reefer train climbing Arcadia Hill. You see the Omaha autos and the Cowboy autos that'll go out to Crawford, Nebraska interchange, and then a little bit of carload block, looks like a ice or a meat there going out on the UP to the West Coast. But this is, 125 empty reefers from Elkhart, Indiana, and only 2 units. So he's struggling up that 0.7 grade. And you can see the summit on the Missouri-Mississippi watershed divide here under the old wooden bridge at Arcadia, and the iron operator so the dispatcher can know if they made the hill or not as our reefers go over the hump. And we even get a wave from the conductor in the caboose here. Now going the other way, we have 244, the Advanced Conrail Perishable. You remember how little that train was coming out of North Platte in the other pictures in October 73 when the SP service was slower. But now the SP service is faster, allowing us to get to the East Coast a day earlier. And so we have the Blue Island block on the front of the train here. And then we have the Enola and the Selkirk and Enola blocks. And you see these white tops going back to forever. There's a little bit of carload here in the shorts block. But to the East Coast, everything the UP has at North Platte routed via CNW to Conrail, everything is almost all perishables. There's over 100 loaded reefers on this train. Incredible. So we're powered up with 5 units. And then in Kennard Siding is the counterpart going the other way, the empty reefer train 261. He's got a fill of brand new covered hoppers going to the UP on the front. And then on the rear, we have 4 caboose, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 still in Great Western colors, and we get a highball from the conductor. And after he clears, then our empty reefer train can come out of the siding. I love this esprit de corps. The brakeman has, the shirt and hat matching the color scheme of CNW. Okay, so we'll follow our Transcontinental Perishable East. Here we are coming past the CTC semaphores at California Junction where the Sioux City line, the Omaha Road takes off. We've flushed out the pheasants. I kind of doubt anything's been down that house track in a while. I'm not sure I'd want to go down there. And then picking up orders at Missouri Valley, the CTC machine controlling the stretch where Heinemann pulled up the double track is inside there. And now we're on the Overland Route main. And here we are at Arion, crossing the Milwaukee Road Sioux City line. You can see the old double track where it used to be, but now it's single track. But the single track is in really good shape. The federal 4R funds had gone into rebuilding the CNW. So at last there's a halfway decent track across Iowa. And now we're starting to upgrade near Vale off the Highway 30 bridge where the grade is stiffening for the climb up Arcadia Hill. And we have our gigantic perishable train. And looks like the soybeans are about to be ready to be harvested in the evening light. And then coming up to the summit, Arcadia, our huge perishable train going flat out. And 100 loaded reefers. That's a sight I won't forget. And then tipping over the top past the iron operator. I'm sure the dispatcher is breathing a sigh of relief. This train is in real good shape. They'll get to Geneva and West Chicago well before the commute rush, and they can get this train down to Blue Island to set Conrail's hot trains to Selkirk and Enola at noon. And we only spent a matter of hours in the Chicago area instead of days. So 73 really marked the turning point in how the Iowa lines, how the Iowa network was going to end up. Is suddenly CNW has strong advantages in both intermodal and carload service. And so their share from then on with UP increased dramatically. And while the shares of the other Iowa lines shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. So you have more and more run through CNW trains added. I don't have time to go through all of that. But this is a pretty amazing turnaround from that 1965 low ebb when Heinemann pulled up the double track because they only had 5 trains each way. The ICC examiner's report finally comes out in 75, and with all the conditions, UP withdrew its proposal to merge, and I think they'd already realized that the rock was too far gone anyway to try to spend the money to bring it back. So right up on, with the UP withdrawing that, then Rock Island declared bankruptcy. As you know, the rock was liquidated in 80, its UP interchange shifting to the CNW. Milwaukee Road declared bankruptcy 2 years later, and much of its line to Omaha disappeared in its 1980 retrenchment. Again, traffic moves over to the CNW. The relations between UP and BN took a big turn for the worse upon BN's 1980 acquisition of the Frisco. The Frisco was UP's critical Kansas City connection going down to the southeast to Memphis and Birmingham. Frisco ran a very good service to connect with SCL and the like, and that was completely lost. And then the relations became even worse in 82 with UP's merger with the MOP. So now BN doesn't want to work with them either. So the Grand Island interchange dwindled to nothing. And the UP BN run-through trains were discontinued. So I was lucky to get those shots I showed you in 82 just before it was gone. So where did the traffic like the Stodash you saw and others go? CNW, of course. So during the 70s and 80s, ICG lost to CNW much of its UP interchange. But ICG was by no means bankrupted by it. They had their strong north-south franchise. But the profitability of its Iowa network declined a lot. Deregulation started phasing in the 1980s, and by 1985, all where the rules were into where you could spin off lines without having to go through abandonment procedures and spend a legal fortune. So ICG spun off its remaining Iowa lines as Chicago Central and Pacific. So just a few pictures from this era. Here we have
still there, Rob?
So A section in their new train, and it's a huge percentage of Rock Island equipment. Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, okay. You cut out there for a moment, but you're back now.
The internet section connection got a little weak. It seems to be okay again. But anyway, this Council Bluffs Proviso train you see is huge percentage is former Rock Island equipment. And we turn around and the westbound way freight is coming down the hill at Bertram. And his train is mostly former Rock Island equipment. And then he dropped most of it in Beverly, but he continues west here at Fairfax with a single former Rock Island hopper. And then look at how beautiful the track is now, as the 4R funds plus CNW has the cash flow of all that traffic off the UP, so they can start to really restore a good double track railroad. This is the Seattle to Wood Street train with the Toyota import autos and the Pacific Northwest to Chicago intermodal. And then westbound, we have the Proviso North Platte with all the domestic autos going across Kate Shelley Bridge at the end of a thunderstorm. And in the fall, from the other side of the bridge, same train 5 years later, a huge train of autos going out to the West Coast. And then behind him, we have a Boone Council Bluffs. He's got the empty coal hoppers from Ames going back to the UP. And then here we are at KC Junction, and now CNW has absorbed the spine line, and we have 3 trains converging at once, 2 of them UP run-throughs. And you can see how dramatically things have changed in a decade, to where the traffic was spread out on all the Iowa lines to where everything is on the CNW. So in 95, CNW is acquired by Union Pacific. The CNW and managers and employees who bought CNW stock in 1972, when Heinemann decided he wanted out of the railroad business and sold it to them, if they hung on to their stock all that time, they did very well indeed. UP completed restoration of the second main track between Mo Valley and West Denison in 1998. Other upgrades were completed to finish transforming the entire east-west ex-CNW main line into a first-class railroad, and really bringing back the overland route to Chicago. UP also completed a program of rationalizing and upgrading CNW's Iowa grain gathering network in 2001. And of course, they picked up some Rock Island lines and some Milwaukee lines as part of that network. And then finally, the weight and speed restricted Kate Shelley Bridge was replaced by a new structure in 2009. So today's railroad network in Iowa is much reduced from its extent in the 70s, as you know, but it's well maintained and it's profitable. And the largest railroad in Iowa is the Union Pacific. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for watching our program. Please visit iowanrhs.com to join the chapter, renew your dues, or order any of the great materials that the Iowa chapter has for sale. We have DVDs, photo CDs, and old switch lamps that are all for sale if anyone is interested in that. And please check out the many other great programs that are available to watch on this YouTube channel. Thank you.